All right, so I'm here with attorney Andrea Burkhart again, and we weren't going to talk about the Depp trial this week because there's so much news with Marilyn Manson. But Andrea has informed me that she has a hunch that something pretty big went down in Amber Heard's deposition that maybe the rest of us haven't caught on to yet. So, Andrea, I guess just go ahead and tell me what do you think? What's going on with the Depp trial?
Well, so this is purely speculation, of course, just based on the little drips of information that we get out into the public record. But I do have a suspicion from that Amber Heard may have been broken in her deposition. And so I wanted to take this opportunity to kind of explain what I've seen that leads me to think that that might be the case. So Amber Heard's deposition was scheduled to take place back in January. There was some initial fuss that she raised in the court there, trying to, we talked about it in an earlier video. She was trying to hide behind her baby and COVID for why, there needed to be all these controls on it, or it needed to be held on Zoom or something like that. We never did see any kind of formal resolution of those complaints. So we don't know when exactly and under what circumstances her deposition did take place, but it's a fairly safe assumption that it ultimately did go forward. So then the second piece of information that we saw is that her prior divorce attorney, Samantha Spector, was then noticed for deposition by Johnny Depp for the end of February. And she's currently litigating that in California, trying to get a protective order so she doesn't have to do that. This to me is a really significant move. As her lawyer, we've seen in the past with the litigation that happened over Eric George, another one of Amber Heard's prior lawyers, and also with the Adam Waldman situation, that it's really hard to get to depose an attorney about anything having to do with their representation of a client or a former client. And that's because virtually everything that was communicated between them is likely to be privileged. And so the attorney is not going to have to disclose any of that information. But there's an exception for that. I mean, there's a few exceptions for that, but there's a main exception to that that we've already saw with Eric George, which is when the client or former client puts those communications at issue in their case. So what we saw with Eric George is she claimed, because I relied on his legal advice that this article that I wrote for the Washington Post was not defamatory, therefore I could not have been acting with actual malice when I wrote it and published it. And so that went through the litigation in the Virginia courts. And what we saw is that that objection was basically overruled by putting her communications with her lawyer at issue and using them as a shield in her defense. She essentially waived privilege to that extent, and Johnny Depp was able to depose Eric George. So with Samantha Spector, we have to assume that something happened that now has put Samantha Spector's communications with Amber Heard into issue in the case. And so when we go back and look at what that might be, what you come up with are the text messages between Amber Heard and Johnny Depp, and also between Johnny Depp and Paige Heard, Amber's mother, right around the end of May 2016 period, when the divorce was just, starting to pick up, and right around the time she had filed the temporary restraining order. And what we saw was Amber Heard telling her mother and telling Johnny Depp, who is protesting, what the hell is going on here? I didn't do any of this. What do you think you're doing? And her explanation is, my lawyers made me do it. They told me I was going to be, kicked out of the penthouses if I didn't make these kinds of accusations. So if Amber Heard in her deposition repeated basically that position that Samantha Spector told me that I needed to, file abuse allegations against Johnny Depp, that has opened the door now for Johnny Depp to be able to go and talk to Samantha Spector about, did you actually give this advice or not? The reason why I think that's so significant is because to get to the point of saying Samantha Spector made me do it, you've already had to back away from, position number one, everything that I've said is 100% true and I can prove it, to, okay, maybe I made this up, but the majority of what I said is true, to, okay, none of it is true at all, but Samantha Spector made me do it. And so there's just a strong indication here to me that she has been broken down to that point of having to acknowledge the fabrications that she's engaged in from the very beginning of this case. And the only defense she has left at this point is to try to shift responsibility onto somebody else who she thinks is going to be able to protect her. And now, of course, Johnny Depp is not even going to allow her that little bit of denial that she can still maintain that it wasn't her fault.
Oh my God. So, okay. So you're saying that you think that in Amber, that you have a hunch that in Amber's deposition for this trial, that they broke her down in the sense that they got her to finally concede that she made up this stuff about Johnny Depp. And they're basically trying to blame it on Samantha Spector. Oh, my attorney told me to do this stuff.
Well, so it's Johnny Depp that's trying to take her deposition, and it's to prove that, Samantha Spector, did not advise her to make up rape and abuse allegations against Johnny Depp. Of course she didn't. And so this is also consistent with what we've seen of their strategy so far. We've already talked about, they left Amber Heard's deposition for very late in the process here. And so what that tells us is the purpose of Amber Heard's deposition in this particular case was not so much to get information to then follow up on and investigate. It's to take the fruits of their investigation that they've come up with so far, confront her with them, and see how she's going to respond to that and how she's going to explain that. So yeah, I think that's consistent with a theory that they just have so much evidence now of her lies that even Amber Heard couldn't consistently maintain that she was telling the truth all along.
Well, that's really interesting. I kind of wondered if I think some of us have been wondering if something like this would happen because, we know that she basically almost fell apart at her earlier deposition. She's chewing her food and she's rolling her eyes and stuff. It does not look like someone who is very well composed. It looks like someone who's really trying hard to put on a tough front. I kind of have in my mind, what I sort of have in my mind is like a Tom Cruise, Jack Nicholson moment from A Few Good Men, where like maybe in the deposition, they just kept hitting her so hard that finally she just had to be like, you can't handle the truth. No.
Well, you can really see that too, because her problem was always going to be her anger. She can't control the circumstances of the deposition. She doesn't like what's going on. It's going to frustrate her. She's going to get angry, and eventually she's going to lose control.
Wow.
Let me take that just a tiny little step further and talk about just a couple of the other little pieces of information that are out there that might be able to shed light on this situation. As we know, in very recent days, both Amber Heard and Johnny Depp had new lawyers appear for them in the Virginia case. Spiritually Empowered and Linda 559 did a great video on Amber Heard's new lawyer, looking at what's her background, why would she be getting involved in this particular case. You look at her profile, she does construction and real estate litigation, and it doesn't seem to be anything real obviously on point. But then you dig a little deeper and you see she's an alternative dispute resolution specialist. Now, I don't want to be a downer for anybody, but the reality is that 99.5% of all civil cases are going to settle without a trial. And so this is a move that is potentially indicative of Amber Heard attempting at the last minute to try to reach some kind of settlement with Johnny Depp. And I think that is important, because if they did break her in her deposition, there's not a lot left to try. You know,
well, that's really interesting. I always kind of wondered if she would be able to make it to the end, or if she would end up basically imploding. So it's interesting to think that maybe she did. All right. Thank you very much. I appreciate that update. And we will have more for you. I have gotten some comments from some of you that you think that Andrea needs her own channel. And I've been trying to convince her of that as well. So that is something that we're going to be working on, is setting up a channel for her so she can start putting a lot of these videos on her channel. But I'm still going to have her on here a lot. We're going to collaborate a lot. But those of you who are Andrea fans, you can look forward to that. All right. Thanks for being here, and we will see you next time.